Hello again, aspiring scientists. Welcome to week 5, part 2 of Science RPS at Home. I am Mr. Jackson at Southampton Elementary School. Today, we are going to be covering structural and behavioral adaptations again. So, the first thing I wanted to do was clarify a couple of things from Monday. An ecosystem. All the living and non-living components interacting in a specific place. Here is that same ecosystem that we saw, but I caught myself making a mistake. I did not include one important thing. I talked about the living and the non-living, but I didn't talk about this word right here, interacting. So let's just take a quick second to think about this. These are the living organisms. Here's some living organisms. Here's some living organisms. But here are non-living organisms. Rocks, dirt, water. So, living and non-living interactions. I use the word interacting. When you use that trick that I showed you yesterday and finding the word within the word, interactions leads to the word interact. And to interact simply means to have a relationship with something. Here's a word you haven't heard in a while. Interdependency. This word was introduced to you in the 3rd grade, and this ties all this stuff together. So, we're talking about ecosystems and how living and non-living things interact with one another. So, another thing to think about is the word interdependency. So if you think about this word and its word within the word, I see the word depend. So interdependency is organisms needing one another, using one another. So how could these organisms use other things in their environment? Here is an ecosystem. So we, excuse me, when you look at this, think about how certain things need other things. Mr. Pryor is going to be teaching about this next week, so I don't want to spill the beans too much for Mr. Pryor, but I need you to think about living and non-living things and how they interact, how they have relationships. So some review words here might be producers, consumers, and decomposers. So go back to that idea of an ecosystem and how things living and non-living interact with each other. But back to what the lesson is at hand. And the lesson at hand is about adaptations. So if you remember me talking about structural adaptations, this is how an organism's body changes to meet the needs of its environment. Behavioral adaptations is how animals think to meet the needs of their environment. So here is something incredibly wild. At the beginning, I said that this would be about plants and animals. So we only talked about animals. I just want to give you this to think about. So here, let me move my head. Here is what we see. Here is what a bee sees. So if you remember me talking about science in our first lesson, I said that science is about making a lot of connections. So here's a couple connections. If you remember when your teacher taught you about light, you were led to understand that light isn't just about what comes from a light bulb or what comes from the sun or when you turn a flashlight on. There's many parts of light, and this right here is a part of light that we can't see. It's called ultraviolet light. So this is how we see it, but this is how a bug sees it. And if you remember Mr. Pryor talking about photosynthesis last week, why would a plant make this right here look important to a bug? What would it want the bug to do? Would it want it to come right here and look around? What does the plant think? And yes, I use the word think. Something that doesn't have a brain is thinking here. But like I said in my first week, plants are incredible. They do a lot of incredible things. So here is a structural adaptation. The plant does this because some way it knows that bugs can see it, because it wants the bug to go there and help it with reproduction to make new versions of itself. So amazingly, this is something a plant does to lure bugs in. It's incredible. But like I said before, plants do some very miraculous things. And again, I don't want to spill the beans too much for Mr. Pryor's lesson next week. And at the same time, I wanted you to realize that it's not just animals changing to meet the needs of its environment. It's plants doing it too. And how can something without a brain know that a bug sees an ultraviolet light? And then how could it have the intelligence to do this to try to lure that bug in? It blows my mind. I'm speechless. So, moving on. Let's get into the heart of what we will be doing. Day 2. The first thing you're going to do is explain and extend this idea of an adaptation. So the first thing I'd like for you to do is check out this video. And this is a pleasant video. This is about a blue duck. And the blue duck has a name. It's called a Theo. Let me be quiet so we can just entertain ourselves with this. Look at that water. And there's our Theo duck, also a blue duck. So structural adaptations are how an animal changes to meet the needs of its environment. So check out that duck's head. When it goes in the water, it's doing something. But look how the water just comes right off that duck. Isn't that weird? That's an adaptation. That bill that it has is an adaptation. And there's something very special about this animal's webbed feet also. So what? When it comes right back up out of the water, it's not wet. What the heck is going on there? So this led me to watching this video right here. And this, you can sit here and watch YouTube all day. This leads right into the Theoduck. And what's cool is this is in New Zealand. And in New Zealand, they have this Australian accent. So this Aussie here is talking with his Australian accent. Oh, excuse me, I'm doing a little too much right now. So after I watched my video, I led into this, and then I started finding out all different sorts of things about the theoduck. Yes, it looks like a hooey duck with a word right there, but it's a theoduck. I love that accent. Oh, couldn't get enough of hearing that all day. That right there. Scraping invertebrates off of rocks. Isn't that fascinating? Look at that thing. And then it starts talking about males and females, calls, and its feet. And man, I could just go on and on about this thing. But back to our lesson. So after you watch that, we're going to do a little journaling. Then you're going to go to Brainpop and watch a video on birds. I love Brainpop. Great stuff going on there. So there's your username and password. Unfortunately, RPS doesn't have that anymore, so you can't get through to that on Clever. So please use that username and password. After you watch that, please attempt the Brainpop quiz that follows. Then we'll have some vocabulary on inherited and acquired traits. And then again, you will go do some journaling. So the journal leads right on into, so here's what we did day one. Hope you saw some cool adaptations there, structural adaptations. I hope after watching this, you caught on to some behavioral adaptations. I hope you did your vocabulary review. And one thing that I wanted to add on right here is a structural adaptation of a bird is its beak. You can look at its beak and pretty much tell what it eats. But birds have been on this planet a long, long time. And this leads into something else that I wanted to talk about just a little bit. And the word is evolution. Evolution means change over time. So if an animal or a plant doesn't evolve to meet the needs of its environment, it's going to die. It's going to go away. So birds have been on this planet for a long, long time. And there are tons of structural adaptations about birds. You really want to learn some neat stuff. Check out an owl. They have really evolved. But anywho, hopefully you got to do some bird watching. Hopefully you got to draw your bird. Hopefully you found out what type of bird you had. Now, what we're doing today, day 2, we watched the video and then you simply answered some questions about it. How many different structural adaptations can you see? Can you draw and list them? And then when I got into that other video, I found out really incredible things about its feet, its bill, and its feathers. But check out that video and see what you get out of it. Then let's go to the Brainpop video, watch it, and then take the quiz. How many structural adaptations did you see? Can you list them? Did you observe any behavioral adaptations? And then I really wanted to stretch it a little bit. After you watch the vocabulary on inherited and acquired traits, I wanted you to really think about something. After taking the quiz, please consider what the video showed. It talked about traits and if they were inherited versus acquired. It also explained this as nature versus nurture. Can you explain the difference here? So inherited versus acquired is a lot like nature versus nurture. So nature is how you're born. Nurture is how someone took care of you and developed you to be the person that you are. So can you tie this into a deeper thing going on here with inherited and acquired traits? Can you try and explain which trait is a structural adaptation and which one is a behavioral adaptation? Because there's a difference. Finally, for day 3, you're going to play a Kahoot that I created for you, and hopefully you'll do my optional writing activity. So I didn't see you last week, when I asked you to draw your stuff and put it on the flip grid. I'm sorry I didn't see anybody do that for me. Hopefully you'll do that for me this time. So what I'm asking you to do is create an imaginary animal or plant. How is it adapted to be unique and successful in its environment? Give it a name. List as many structural and behavioral adaptations about the animal as possible. Google it if you need help. So, first thing you're going to do is try to draw it, name it, give it a scientific name. So, human scientific name is Homo sapien. So, see if you can come up with a fancy name for it. Where does it live? Draw it and label its adaptations. After you're done, click on the link and post it on Flipgrid. So, hopefully, I can give some shout outs to somebody that's gone above and beyond to do a good job. Here is an example I made. I made the cleaning wampler. Oh yeah, that's some good stuff there. So in this quarantine, we've all lived in our house a little bit longer, so we've all had to chip in and help out a little bit more. So I came up with this animal called the cleaning wobbler. Its scientific name is Clinosus wamplus. Its environment is a household pet that can vacuum and dust the house. So imagine if you had a pet that could cook and clean and do all those wonderful things for you. It'd be neat if we had something that could do our homework for us and pay our bills, but I can't get that far ahead. So this is the cleaning pet. So I drew it, I gave it a name, I labeled it. Here's his vacuum cleaner. That's a structural adaptation. Here's little padded feet. So as it walks around, it scrubs and it cleans the floor. It has a special dusting tail to clean the dust off in the living room. And it knows when the house is dirty. That's its behavioral adaptation. Now, if I can only adapt it to wash dishes. So please try to come up with yours and then post it on Flipgrid. I hope you're enjoying all of the things that we are providing for you, and I hope I didn't spill the beans too much for Mr. Pryor's lesson next week. Stay healthy, try to learn something new, and remember, show your Southampton Tiger pride. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.